This video is a compilation of several short videos we've made before, brought together into one place. Each of them looks at a different technique used in the anime production process, the small notes, symbols, and methods that artists rely on, but that most viewers never get to see. So sit back and let's go through them one by one. Have you ever wondered what all those notes on anime storyboards actually mean? A storyboard isn't just a collection of drawings. It's where the director organizes every detail and sequence before production even begins. The first note in each storyboard panel is the cut. Every time the camera angle changes, you get a new cut. If the camera stays the same, but the action changes, the director adds letters like 3A or 3B to keep the production organized. Next to that is the layout frame, where the director notes camera movements like TU, meaning the camera pushes in toward the subject, or TB, meaning the camera pulls back. Next comes the description of character actions and dialogue. This is how animators know exactly how characters should move and how to match their lip sync. Finally, and most importantly, the shot duration. In storyboards, time is written using a specific formula, seconds plus frames. For example, if you see something like 2 plus 12, it means the cut lasts 2 seconds and 12 frames. Writing down the exact frame count helps animators understand the precise timing of each shot, so the film flows smoothly without missing a single beat. Keeping characters consistent starts with the artists who refine every drawing back onto model. Ever wondered how an animated episode can be drawn by dozens of artists, yet still look perfectly consistent? The answer lies in one key step: Sakkan. Sakkan is part of the production stage responsible for maintaining visual consistency across every shot. The main task of a Sakkan is to refine drawings from the layout and enshutsu stages, ensuring characters stay true to the original model sheets. In earlier stages, artists often focus on animating motion and performance, so characters can easily drift off model in proportions or details. That's where Sakkan steps in. They adjust facial features, eyes, hair, and body proportions to bring everything back on model while still preserving the original motion. This work is usually done on yellow paper to help it stand out from other steps. Depending on the drawing quality, a Sakkan may do minor touch-ups or redraw everything. They also add missing details and indicate highlights and shadows to complete the drawings. If the drawings still don't meet the required standard, they move on to Sakkan, where a chief animator performs the final pass. Sakkan is a crucial step in the pipeline. It ensures character designs stay accurate before moving to later stages. Done well, this step provides a solid foundation for Ginga artists to draw key animation. It helps prevent proportion issues later on, maintains visual consistency, and delivers a seamless viewing experience across the entire work. Before a drawing can be corrected, someone has to decide how many frames the motion needs and how they're spaced. Have you ever wondered what those charts like this, or this in anime drawings actually mean? They're called timing charts. They're guides that tell animators how many in-between frames are needed and how they should be divided between two key poses. These charts are usually drawn by the key animator for the in-between animators after the main poses are done. Based on them, the in-between animators draw the in-between frames to connect the two key poses, making the motion smooth and properly timed. For example, a chart like this shows how frames are spaced between two key poses. Depending on the key animator's intention, the spacing can be uneven to create a sense of speed, slowness, holding, or releasing energy. Sometimes you'll also see arrows indicating the direction of where the character would be moving, or arcs used to indicate the spacing between each mark. The notation can vary from studio to studio, but the goal is always the same: to control motion with precision. Besides camera angles, poses, or movement, timing in anime production is just as crucial and must be carefully controlled. Just like timing, the path the camera takes through a shot is planned out with its own set of notes. Those boxes you see in drawings and anime production, like this one, or this one, They actually mean more than you might think. Even though anime is hand-drawn, it still speaks the same visual language as cinema. The camera can pan sideways, zoom in, or stay still to convey the intention of a shot. And these decisions are usually made early on by the director. Where does the camera sit? How does it move? And for what purpose? Now, take a closer look at these boxes. They show the camera direction, its starting point and its ending point. For example, in this cut, the camera starts with a close-up of the character at A, then gradually zooms out to a wide shot at B. Or in this cut, the camera also starts close at A, then zooms out to B and pushes out one more to C. Based on this information, animators time and stage the characters to match the camera movement. These notes also help the compositing team understand how the camera moves and put everything together accurately. In more complex shots, the camera direction can become much faster and more complex. When those planned drawings come back, the director marks them up on colored paper to fix what's off. Have you ever wondered why some keyframes in anime are drawn on yellow, pink, or other colored papers instead of plain white paper? The reason is actually very simple. Those are corrections, or notes from the animation director during production. This is where the animation director draws correction lines to ensure the character stays consistent with the original design. The process usually works like this. The animator first draws the keyframes and sends them to the animation director. Then the animation director puts a colored layer over the drawing and draws correction lines directly on top. For example, adjusting the hair, fixing the shading, or correcting the eyes and eyebrows to match the character model. When the drawings are passed to the in-between and cleanup animators, they follow these correction lines to fix the frame properly before finishing the remaining work. Therefore, the final frame meets the required form and quality for the filmmaking. Animation is a work that demands care and precision. Behind every small cut you see on the screen are the efforts of many dedicated artists working tirelessly day and night. Look closely at those raw keyframes, and you'll notice they often aren't fully drawn yet. Have you ever noticed that during anime production, characters sometimes look like they're flickering? When drawing keyframes, which are the main frames of a movement, animators don't need to fully draw every detail of the character in each frame. If certain parts don't change, like the face, hair, or clothing, animators can temporarily skip them. These details will be completed later in the in-between stage. For example, in this scene, only the character's arm is moving, while the head and face stay the same, so the key animator only draws the arm in the next frame. When the hair moves, they draw the hair to show that change while the face stays still. That's why it can feel a bit flickery. At this stage, animators focus on timing, pacing, and the motion. Drawing everything would slow things down and make revisions much harder. Animation is a collaborative process, and drawings are how animators communicate clearly and logically. All these drawings then have to be stacked and labeled into the right layers to work together. Have you ever noticed labels like A1, A2, B1 with circles and triangles on the animation notes and wondered what they mean? In anime production, every shot is built from multiple layers. Imagine it like a stack of transparent sheets placed under a camera. The background is always at the very bottom. The layer closest to the background is called layer A, and the layers above it are labeled B, C, D, and so on. The more layers a scene has, the further the alphabet goes. For example, in this shot, if we separate everything into layers, we get 3 in total. The background, layer A, Nero, and layer B, the fish. Now, what about those geometric symbols? They usually indicate 3 types of drawings. A circle marks a keyframe, the most important frames in a cut. No symbol means an in-between, the drawings that smooth out the motion between keyframes. And a triangle represents a breakdown, also placed between keyframes, but used to define the direction and structure of the movement. So keyframes are the milestones, breakdowns are the direction guides, and in-betweens are what smooth everything out. That's it. Lesson done. On top of those layers, animators mark where light and shadow fall on the character. Before an anime reaches your screen, this is how professional animators see it. It's a working file with red and blue lines. Blue lines represent shadow areas on the character. For example, shadows under the chin, on the collar, or inside sleeves. Red lines, on the other hand, indicate lighter areas. They're usually highlights on skin or hair. Sometimes you may also see green lines, which represent a second shadow layer to indicate darker tones or gradient areas. To make working files easier to read, these highlight and shadow areas are also filled with color rather than shown as lines only. These fill colors follow established guidelines. Most commonly, yellow is used for highlights, blue for shadow areas, and pink for hair shadows. That said, each studio has its own guidelines. By looking at this system alone, animators can immediately understand how to handle lighting for the character. Therefore, different animators can work on the same scene while keeping lighting and emotion consistent. Some layers aren't behind the character at all. Sometimes a piece of background sits in front to hide them. We all know that the background is typically the bottommost layer. But have you ever heard of a special background layer that sits in front of the characters? That is what we call a book. In essence, books are background elements extracted into independent layers. This allows them to be displayed either in front of or behind the characters. The rules for layering a book are decided right from the layout stage. The layout artist will outline the area and use a specific color to mark the book's boundaries, making it easy for the subsequent departments to identify and process. A single shot can have multiple book layers stacked together, following the rule that Book 1 is always the layer furthest from the camera. This continues with Book 2, Book 3, and so on. Because the background and animation departments work in parallel, animators usually draw the character in full, including the parts that will eventually be obscured by the book. The biggest advantage of separating books is the ability to animate the environment during post-production. Take the music video by Nero and Vadal as an example. The book here is the cliffside where Nero is running. Separating it from the background underneath allows a compositing team to slide the clip downward to create a 3D spatial effect. By dragging or sliding different book layers at varying speeds, studios can give a 2D frame multi-layered, vivid movements that feel like 3D space. Next time you watch an anime, try to spot where a book might be. If you see a character suddenly disappear behind a bush or a table, congratulations, you've just caught the animator's secret trick. For that depth to work, the artist has to paint far more background than whatever shows on screen. Why does a 2D background sometimes feel so 3D? This is what you see on screen, and this is what the background artist actually paints. Actually, a background isn't limited to the frame you see on screen. To allow the camera to pan left, right, up, or down, artists often paint a much larger background that covers the entire area the camera will pan across. As the camera moves across different parts of that artwork, your brain doesn't think, that's just a flat painting sliding by. Instead, it stitches those changing views together into a room, a street, much like how you scan a real environment with your eyes. That's why even a flat 2D painting can create such a strong sense of space. But how about making the background moving, like this? Pulling the background into separate layers is also the trick that makes a flat scene feel three-dimensional. Why these scenes can still feel so alive and three-dimensional, even though they're completely 2D. The secret lies in a technique called parallax. Parallax creates the illusion of depth by splitting the background into multiple layers and moving them at different speeds. Objects closer to the camera move faster, while layers farther away move more slowly. It's similar to what happens when you're riding in a car and looking out the window. Trees by the roadside seem to rush past, while distant buildings or mountains barely appear to move at all. Using this same principle, animators can create different types of camera movement, whether it's a horizontal pan, a vertical move, or even a push forward. It makes a 2D scene feel much larger and deeper. In traditional animation, this effect was created by separating a scene into multiple cells and background layers, then moving them at different speeds under the camera. Today, tools like After Effects, Blender, and other animation software make creating parallax much easier and more flexible. So next time you're watching anime, take a closer look at the background. You might start noticing parallax in more scenes than you think. And those were the techniques we've covered so far across our short videos. Each one is just a small piece of the much larger process that goes into making anime. We'll keep breaking down more of them in future videos, so if you enjoyed this compilation, follow Otsu Labs so you don't miss what's next.